Welcome back to the Rhonda Swan Show, everyone. I'm super excited about today. We have a super lineup, by the way. In fact, if you have been enjoying this season, you're going to continue to get so much intuitive value because we've got some of the most unbelievable women. In fact, they are the authors of the upcoming book from Women Gone Wild, Intuition Edition, that is launching in 2023. And I am so excited for my guest today. Her name is Reena Merchant, and she has designed the user experience over the last 15 years for companies like, get this one, Google, Sony PlayStation, Citrix, with GoToMeeting, and even companies like Blackberry, which is, as you know, has left a historical footprint in the tech space. Now, if you've loved how easy software and applications have been to use or navigate through from any of these companies mentioned, Reena and her teams have been responsible for that enjoyable customer experience. She's also the founder and CEO, though, of OurVoice, which is a community benefit organization focused on helping others strengthen their self-esteem and authentic presence. She's been featured for her work and community contributions in publications such as Silicon Valley Modern Luxury, Toronto Star, and Metro News, as well as on Much Music. Reena is also a visual artist, and her artwork has been exhibited at venues including the Royal Ontario Museum and the Canadian National Exhibition. In 2018, Reena was selected as a finalist for the Women of the Year Award by Women in IT Silicon Valley. Woo, sister, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for that generous intro and for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you today, Ron.
I know, me too. I love, these bios of the people that get to come on this show. It's like, I read them, and get to recite and, say them. I'm like, these are amazing people. Like, you are an amazing woman. And I want to honor you for that, because this is like a step in a level I think that many women may either aspire to or think they can never get there, especially IT. Can you talk a little bit about how you got into the IT space and, how this has gotten you to where you are, or why you even stepped into the IT space?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share. It's really interesting. When I was younger, I didn't know I was going to get into IT. I wanted to be an artist. I always had an interest in the arts. And then, somehow life brought me to IT. I've also enjoyed problem solving and logic and using your head. And so I kind of ended up getting into computer science, and I really enjoyed studying it. I started actually my career as a software developer, and then I thought, I really want to bring in that artistic piece. And that's how I got into design and user experience design. So that's how my journey kind of brought me into tech. And I never looked back. I enjoyed tech because it was just this perfect way of bringing the logical thinking and the problem solving together with the artistic side and the creative side. And I think with user experience design, as you mentioned too, it's so much about creating that great experience for humans. And I think that's something that's really important to me. And so that's how I got into tech, and I ended up here.
Well, it's kind of cool, right? So you actually took what's trending, what was happening in the world, and used your creative ability. And that's, I think it's so cool when someone can take really what they're passionate and love about it and then bring it into something they do. Is tech something that you see yourself doing for a very, very long time?
I think so. I think so. I've many times that, in my journey, I've sort of paused and thought, how am I feeling about this? Is this really my calling? And I think it is. I think what I love about it the most, it is that human piece. We're building all these products, whether, as you said, whether it's at Google or Sony PlayStation or whatever, company XYZ, we're building all these products. And there's obviously with business in general, so much focus on revenue and sales and building products that help business grow. And I think that's really important. And I love being part of that because you're at the heartbeat of business. Yeah. But what I love especially is the human side. So being in user experience design, it's all about, well, how do we grow business and how do we build products in a way that's also good for humans, that's also good for users, that brings some value, some meaning, some usefulness to people's lives. And I think that, to me, the intersection of those two things, being able to do good for business and humans at the same time. And it's hard and it's a challenge. And I know we don't always get it right in the tech industry, but that sort of aspiring to that, I think is just I enjoy it so much. It's such a gratifying challenge. So I really do think that I'm going to be doing this for a while.
Yeah, I love that because it's like, yeah, like to even know that the minds behind the experience or the tech actually thinks that way, and which you said something that you believe that this is part of your calling, which kind of leads me into the intuition part of it. Obviously, you're going to be one of the authors in our intuition book, and I'm really grateful for that and excited because the women that we're bringing, the caliber of women's stories. How could you say that intuition has played a role in, where you are now and maybe where you're even going, especially with some of the work that you're currently doing just out of even the tech space?
Yeah, so much so. Firstly, I am so incredibly honored to be part of Women Gone Wild and the Intuition book. I'm so, so grateful that is the case. And thank you for having me. Intuition, yeah, it's played such a big role in my life. Like I think back to my earlier years and I don't, I never really knew, you hear about intuition, but I didn't know what it felt like to understand your intuition or to hear your intuition or to tap into it. Like, what does that mean for myself? I don't think I really knew. I was always in my head. I like to think of this as there's what's happening in my head. And I feel like that's really visceral. Like you can really feel that and hear that really loud and clear. Yeah. And I've always been a very logical person. And then there's, what's going on in my heart. I'm also, as logical as I am, I'm also a very sensitive feeling kind of person. So I'm always have all these emotions going on inside me. And then somewhere under all that, there's like, what is my gut telling me? What is my intuition? And I think my whole life, I didn't know how to sift through all the things that were happening within me to really quiet all that and really listen to what your intuition was saying. So I didn't really know. And I think I was going through life, whether it was like career or other personal life decisions, by just doing what my head was telling me. And my head was usually telling me to do what others expected of me. So that was essentially my life journey. And then I think somewhere along the way, I did have some there's always these like personal journeys, these like awakening moments that you have in life. So I had a little bit of that. And I think somewhere along the way, there was this shift to like, it's almost like the universe pushed me into some scary situations. Like, for example, I grew up in Toronto, Canada, and I never thought I would leave. So I was working for tech companies and I was there in Toronto, and it was completely out of my comfort zone to leave. But somehow the universe pushed me and I ended up in California. And because of that, I was, I had all these opportunities to work at tech companies here. And so I think along the way, I sort of got a little bit better at listening to my intuition. And when inside you just know this is the right thing for you, even if that's not what's expected of you externally.
Yeah, I get that. So, because I think too, especially with cerebral, right, intelligent people, we tend to get very logical, right? And which kind of leads me to wanting to dig a little bit deeper in that with you, because obviously you're in IT, right? You're extremely logical. You really know how to put things together. So how does intuition play? How does intuition and your logic, like how do you separate it, right? Because it's that feeling, and then just like, well, but because you said a couple of things, I want to go deeper in that one because, right, sometimes it's what people think of you, and then it's like, is it also what you think they want you to do? Or like, how do you start separating logic from intuition,
Yeah, that's a great question. And, it's a constant journey. I feel like I'm every day working on getting better at that and really honing in on that. I think for me, initially, it's funny, this is just a very tactical thing, but it started with meditation. I just didn't know. I was just at a point in my life where I was so stressed out and there was just so much swirling inside of my head. And I started meditating, and that, I think, allowed me to learn and give myself permission to just quiet all of that chaos inside of me. Through that, then I learned, wait, when I quiet that, there's another little voice in there that I'm usually not hearing, but oh my goodness, I can hear it now. And I think through that, I learned, okay, there is a way that there's this intuitive voice. There's my intuition that always exists. It's always there. It's just that many times I'm maybe not tapping into it. So it was learning how to do that and how to say, okay, even when I'm not meditating, I'm walking down the street or I'm sitting in a meeting at work in the tech world, how do I let the brain go and let the logical thinking continue? Because that's important too. That's such a critical part of life and everything we do, but also learn how to give space to that sometimes quieter voice. The intuition, at least for me, and I've heard from many others, it's not the loudest thing screaming inside you. It's quieter, but it's there. And how do you learn to give space to all of that? So yeah, that's been a journey for me. And I do, it helps me in the tech world. It helps me all the time. Like I'm day to day making all these logical decisions on this project and that project and this software decision. But then, you know, deep down, it's like, am I doing the right thing? Am I headed in the right direction? Am I doing what's right for my team? Like those types of that knowing of, am I on the right path? I think that's where my intuition has really helped me.
Yeah, that's really great advice. You know, I mean, meditations, same with me. When the moment I started to just calm down, because I've got, you know, I'm doing all kinds of things. I got this, you know, running a company, doing a book, doing all this. It's like, you know, and you can get very heady and you got all these team that you're trying to talk to. And it's like, the moment we calm down and just take a moment, I always say, like, it's like my monkey mind, you know, that's going. Then I'm like, but then my soft, that intuitive kind of, you know, gut voice, if you will, or that calming sensation allows you to go, wait, am I making the right decision? You know, and I think this is part of this growth. And I think a beauty of where we as women tend to tap into that a bit sooner sometimes than men. And how would you, I want to kind of bring that into then in your tech space. Like, I know there's not as many women. I mean, you're kind of an anomaly, if you will, being the head of very big division in tech. You know, how have you found that, like with certain social constructs? Like, how has that worked out for you? And how do you bring in that intuitive, that calming space as a woman into such a, you know, bigger element, if you will?
Yeah, that's such a great question and such a great topic. It's, you know, it's challenging at times because, as you said, there aren't as many women in tech, and even the women that are in tech, and I can speak for myself, many times there's, because of the majority and the sort of like the status quo of the culture, we are expected to behave in a certain way, and we're expected to be that louder voice, that louder presence that doesn't necessarily lean on the intuition. And you try to be that person. And in that, I have found whenever I've tried to do that, I'm actually missing out on the intuition within me. And so it's been a lot of learning to have the courage to say, no, I don't need to, my presence, the way I lead, the way I show up at work in this industry that maybe doesn't typically show up this way. It doesn't need to be like that. It can be my own flavor, my own way of showing up. And in that, learning to, it's learning how to coexist in that industry. It's like, yes, I'm constantly in boardrooms with people who aren't like me. They're men, they're older than me, or they're maybe women, but they've got a louder presence. Like I have my own demeanor. And so it's taken a lot of courage for me to say, no, I have the permission to be who I am. I don't have to be that. And first step is like, go into that room being this person. And then second step is you don't have to be yelling and screaming and loud and all of that. But it's like, if I know within me that there's something that needs to be said, and that's where the intuition, I think, comes in, and then just having that courage to say it in my own way. So it's a constant journey, though.
Yeah, and thank you for that, because it's like having that grounded, you know, voice. Like, you know, I'm loud, yet I also don't come when I need to present something as someone that's loud. It's like, especially as a woman, I think maybe you'll agree to this. Like when we're sitting at big tables, if we're just in our head, we're looking at, oh, she's just blah, blah, blah over here, right? But when you come and you really know what your work is, I have found that really I haven't really seen this like gender issue or, you know, inequality. However, I have seen it when I'm not in my grounded space, when I actually do know what I'm talking about. And you know, I always like to play it on both sides, right? Like, oh, gender equality, but it's like, actually, I also say, well, how do you become and be received and respected and not have to deal with that? And I think it's coming with what you know and really standing your ground and not letting either be pushed over or come in a heady way. Because I think it can happen for men and women. Can you kind of add to that a bit?
Yeah, I completely agree. I find, I've learned this many times the hard way. It seems like what I'm experiencing on the outside is so much a reflection of me and my own thoughts. And if I, to your point, if I'm coming in clear and strong, then I am able to speak and I am heard, and it doesn't matter. And again, I'm showing up as my authentic self, whether that's loud, whether that's quiet, whatever that is. But it's when within myself I'm doubtful and I'm not sure and I'm not listening to my intuition, or I'm coming in with these preconceived notions or fears of, no, I don't belong here. And that's not to say that there isn't an external responsibility for all of us to ensure equality and diversity. And there is, but I think so much of it I've learned is within myself, where if I'm just aligned, then I see that reflected back to me on the outside. And then it just becomes so much easier. I sometimes have been so surprised where I'll walk into a room and I'm just like aligned going in. And then it's so easy. It's like, I got my point across. I sold what I was trying to sell. I convinced who I was trying to convince. But if I'm shaky going in, then it's my own doubt that makes the whole process harder.
Yeah, that right there, and certainly, I don't disregard that there are, inequalities and certainly, forms of suppression in a lot of ways, especially for women. Like, that's why we stand for this. However, what you said is very powerful. And this can happen for men and women, right? We walk into a room, if we're uncertain, it's energy, right? And they know. It's just like a dog, right? A dog knows when you're afraid of them, and they're like, rawr. I feel the same way because I was in corporate for 10 years. I was in Fortune 100 company, and same exact. I'd walk in the room if I'm like, okay, I know what this is. I know what I know. I know what I have to present. Or if I just came in uncertain, I felt like I got chewed up like by the dogs, And that's a message that I like to always share, because I also don't want to, I'm not a feminist, right? I stand up for women. I'm not a feminist that says, you're wrong, we're better, treat us different, treat us better. However, I think that there's a lot of power in taking self-responsibility as well, too, and just knowing what you are. It's just a really powerful moment. And I think that's what we're standing for with, the movement that we're doing and the roles that we're taking on. Some of us do have to stand in the lion's den in front of the dogs, and prove it wrong or learn how to respond in those moments. So, okay. So I want to kind of move into, because I want to talk about your OurVoice project. Share with us what this is about. I mean, this is like really big. You've taken on another whole, founder role organization of your own.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. I actually launched this organization in 2019, so just before the pandemic, and it was really inspired by my own journey. As I shared earlier, I've really been on this journey of finding my own voice and trying to understand what does authentic mean for me, for Reena, and how do I really found this incongruence, I think I realized, where I was like realizing I had certain thoughts or feelings or knowing inside me, but I wasn't showing up externally in congruence with what I was feeling on the inside. I was really just, again, doing what was expected of me externally. And I've just been on this journey my whole life. And I think a few years ago, I was really inspired. As I would talk to others, I realized, well, wait a minute, everyone's on this. Everyone I talk to is on this journey. It manifests in different ways for each of us. But to some extent, everyone is kind of exploring this in their own ways. And so it prompted me to connect with others. I found the more that I built a community and I connected with others who were also exploring similar things, it both helped me and helped others. And so it just inspired me. So a few years ago, I launched OurVoice, and it's a community organization. It's all about connecting people, bringing resources to people to help all of us strengthen self-confidence, authenticity, our voice. And it's been incredible, because I've learned that as I put myself and my heart and my soul into it, as I build resources, whether it's podcasts or blog posts or whatever, it's continually helping me grow. And of course, I'm doing it with the hope that I can give, and there's a piece of that might help other people. But the more I do it, the more I grow. And so it's this beautiful experience, and I've been connected with so many amazing people through it, and so it's a really gratifying thing.
Yeah, wow. And is that something like how is the community run? Is it like monthly, daily? Is it online? Is it events? Like how do you really manage it and run it?
It's mostly online. So
Okay.
we started with live events initially, but then after the pandemic, most of it moved online. So it's online events. There's a podcast also accessible online,
Awesome.
reading resources, articles, blog posts, all of that. And the community is also online. Yeah, I think the podcast has been the most exciting part for me. It's generated so much dialogue with, as I meet others, guests on the podcast, they bring their expertise to the table of, whether it's what does it look like to have equity and inclusion at work, or what does it look like to navigate, psychology and psychological subjects in the context of authenticity. There's all these interesting topics and guests, and I learned so much from them, and it's also generated a lot of dialogue from a community standpoint.
Yeah, and it's like these are the questions that need to be brought to the table, and having others ask you how you just said, like, what if? What would it be like if? These are powerful questions that we can ask, and how do we navigate? And I'm excited to learn more about that because the work certainly that we're doing with Women Gone Wild, and like I want to learn from all of you and how we can make this better and move these initiatives forward and bring better questions so that we can help make a grander impact on the world. So Reena, I have one last question for you because I know it's like pretty exciting when you're like, oh, there's a woman in tech and she works for Google. Can you share like what you're working on right now, or maybe what kind of initiatives that you might have planned coming for this upcoming year? Or you're not allowed to say anything.
No. Definitely, I'm happy to share it. There's lots I can share. So I work on the YouTube team. I work on YouTube ads, and so I lead a team of user experience designers and researchers. And what we create together is it's essentially the ad experience on YouTube. So if you're using the free version of YouTube, it is ad supported to keep it free. So if you're using it on any device, whether it's on your phone or you're watching YouTube on your TV or on your tablet, if you're using the free version of YouTube, you would encounter ads. Yeah. And so what our team does is we design the experience around those ads. When do they appear? How do they appear? How do users interact with them? And really the mission is, again, it's at the heart of the business, which is really, really exciting because I've learned so much. It's going to be my 5-year anniversary at Google in just a couple of days. So it's just, cool. I know, and I've learned so much because I haven't worked in ads before. This was my first endeavor in ads. So it's kind of exciting to be working at the heart of the business. At the same time, it's a very interesting human challenge. Like, how do you create ads that are useful, that are meaningful, that are relevant, that help people? They're not just ads, and they're not just there to make money, but they're actually useful in a deeper way. And that is such a difficult challenge. And so it's been very, very inspiring. So that's what we're working on. We have a lot of cool things on the go, basically, trying to reinvent and innovate ads on YouTube and make them great for users.
So cool.
And before.
Oh, I don't know if you heard Buttercup here, but if you can see her, I don't know if you can see her. My dog Buttercup is like barking. This is the coolest part about being in your studio. Yeah. I'm like, Buttercup, excuse me. But I heard everything you were saying about YouTube and the ads. I was like, oh, that's the best way about it. Well, that's pretty cool. I like it. And I'm excited to learn more because now when I look at YouTube and I'm like, oh, wait, I know the lady that's been playing with this. She knows the algorithms. This is why this is coming up. And because you're in user experience, I'm quite, I'm just excited to even learn more from you on how we can do things better too as a company. Like this is what this connection becomes, right? How we use each other's work and how we help each other become better. Reena, thank you so much. I'm so inspired by you, and thank you for just saying yes, and saying yes to yourself, saying yes to women, yes to tech, and changing the world one day at a time.
Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you for having me, and thank you for everything you all are doing. What you are doing for society is phenomenal. So I love it.
My pleasure. And what we just realized is that this is the monkey bark. So we have monkeys. Okay, so we have monkeys in Bali, and the monkeys run across up here, right outside here, and my dogs that they have this funny monkey bark. It's like a squeaky bark. We're like, oh yeah. So in the middle of our show right now, there's a bunch of monkeys running around.
That is amazing.
The luxury of
and
Bali.
Also, I'm sorry because my doorbell, I realized, rang in the middle of our, I hope that wasn't disruptive.
That's
I'm so
what
sorry.
It is what it is. Thanks, darling. You're amazing. Thank you for being here, and be unstoppable and stay wild.